Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to our next edition of CIOs and Bowties. Feels like it's been a while since we did one of these, and I guess a lot of water under the bridge, as it were. So, continuing along with our themes and how we determine what we're going to speak about, we monitor the articles that we put out and what gets good likes and interest, and what interests us as well, frankly. And this one kind of piqued everyone's attention. Ray Dalio, great guy. I've actually been an investor in Bridgewater. So Ray Dalio says the world is in a great sag, in quotation marks, a great sag, and echoes the 1930s. So none of us, well, very few of us were around in the 30s, but certainly a difficult era. So let me just highlight some of the key points. Actually, a very short article, and Dave, I'd like your responses there. Key points. Ray believes it's too late for central banks to reverse a global slowdown. He's warning that current conditions remind him of Depression-era environment. He says the world is currently entering a great sag as the natural cycle of growth ends. Okay, interesting. Speaking at a CNBC conference, he says it's too late for central banks to make much of a difference. The cycle is fading. We are now in the world in what I call a great sag, adding that monetary policy and especially interest rate reductions were unlikely to offer much stimulus. Europe is at the limit of that, Japan is too, and the US doesn't have much to go on that. Interesting. He says the world was also experiencing the biggest wealth gap since the 1930s, and that was creating political stress. I think we'll discuss some of that.
We will indeed.
In the United States, baffling, right? The top 1/10 of 1% of the population has a net worth that is approximately equal to the bottom 90%, he said. So staggering if you think of it as a pyramid. Also, like the 1930s, we have a rising power challenging an existing world power in the form of China, US challenges. And then he goes on to, and the article is really short, he claimed there were 4 types of war to watch for: trade war, technology war, currency war, and geopolitical. So I guess we can consider in one of our segments ways to play those wars from an investment perspective. So what do you make of all this, Dave?
Let me at the outset state, folks, and good afternoon. Today is Friday the 22nd of November 2019. The article that Greg is alluding to and has just read from was published in the middle of October of this year. So we've had a good month and a bit. Today, as it happens, the Wall Street Journal published an article saying Bridgewater Capital, i.e. Ray Dalio's company, had a $1 billion bet on markets correcting, US markets and European markets correcting by March of next year. He has come out personally just before us filming, actually, or videoing, denying that, saying we might have bets on play, but everything's integrated. There's no one bet that plays out in terms of what Bridgewater are trying to do. So he's very anti what the Wall Street Journal wrote this morning, stating that Bridgewater were betting on markets correcting. That being said, Greg, I think we are. We're dealing with post-Bernanke, that would be Ben Bernanke. He was governor of the central bank, chairman of the central bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, and instituted policies never seen before, such as quantitative easing, followed in part, well, in fact, even more aggressive sense by the Europeans, by Draghi, who's no longer in place. We now have Lagarde, who was the IMF head, who is now the central bank head in Europe. And all these people are Keynesians. All these people think and believe that they can institute policies that are going to change the world. We're paying a price today. What is the price? These unintended consequences, slow growth for an extended period of time. And I think that's what Dalio is getting to more than anything else. A whole lot of reasons for that. None less so than central bank behavior the last 10, 11 years.
Right. We've written about it and we've spoken about the negative interest rates and how in time we will look back and say how crazy this was, almost as if bonds are at bubble pricing, giving rise to negative interest rates. So one of the themes that we're starting to see work in fits and starts is this movement towards, let's just say, precious metals and other, let's say, non-central bank-backed currencies. So, Bitcoin or something like that.
Indeed. So.
So there is this flight to quality. Maybe you can key on that a bit, but certainly the theory goes, well, if I'm going to have to pay to put my money in a bank account in Switzerland, I may as well just buy Kruger Rands or Gold Eagles and keep them in a safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thematic of interest.
And by the way, added to that particularly investment theme, we are seeing in the US for the first time in a decade signs of inflation and CPI creeping up. It only takes the creep up for inflation to set in its way. Obviously, full employment aids and abets that inflation rise. With that being said, maybe precious metals aren't such a bad idea right now for two reasons that we've just stated in the last 30 seconds.
Okay, let's leave it there. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a bit more about the geopolitical situation. But I do want to leave with one thing, and I found this very interesting. So it's an article, it was in the New York Times. It says ECB acts to head off recession threats in Europe. But one thing it does highlight is that Germany, as a consequence of its experience during the 30s, which was essentially hyperinflation. And we can, there's books and volumes written about that, the reparation from the World War I, etc. But constitutionally, they have an amendment that affects deficit spending in Germany. And I wonder, it's way too late here to start that, but I wonder if that would be, a good way to protect the system against all these huge debts and deficits.
And clearly within Europe, by the way, they have exactly the opposite viewpoint from the Italies of the world, the Spains of the world, the Greeces of the world. Conflicts within the European Union, my goodness, are there conflicts within the European Union?
Yeah. Okay, we'll be right back.